Hello friends, welcome to Universe of Naruto X. If you love Naruto what if stories and anime explanations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin today's story. A large plane was now making its way to land on the runway at the Gotham City airport. And just as it was releasing its landing gear, out came a figure holding to one of the tires and soon landed outside of the field near the runway. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze dusted himself off and soon got on his way to get away from the authorities and go see the rest of the city. He was still wearing his usual gear as he hid and quickly changed his looks with hair dye color and hench. He also made sure to check his laptop and UBS drives and was pleased to see that they were all working nicely. Once that was done, he moved past the airport's field, leapt over the fences, and moved towards the city. Moving into Gotham City in the closing hours of the afternoon was already giving the city something of a gothic look, and he could not help but feel a bit spooked out by it. He had read the files on the city, and while it had its fair share of fun places and things to do, the criminal elements in the city were literally flowing around like water. And a number of the said criminals were all crazy and completely unlike anything he had dealt with back in LA. One such foe was known as the Riddler, who seemed to enjoy making all these wacky but deadly word puzzles that usually drove the people who were his victims. He had no plans on mincing words with a guy like him since he was in no mood for wasting time on some crazy and lethal scheme. He placed those thoughts aside as he moved into the city. The first thing he did was go to a nearby cafe and decided to grab some food and some drink. As he sat down, he decided to check out the news, which was thankfully being played on a nearby TV set. In the current news today, billionaire Bruce Wayne will be attending a special charity ball for the Gotham City Police Department Veterans Fund. This has been Bruce's second appearance in the ball and has shown his support for the Gotham PD. Naruto looked at this man named Bruce Wayne and he could see that he was all smiles and working hard in front of the camera. He had a feeling that this guy was hiding something, a pain of some sort. But he decided that it was not his business since, despite playing what he suspected was a role, Bruce was very genuine in his actions when he presented an award to the police officers who were there on the stage. For now, however, Naruto's concern was on what else was in the news, and it was not going to be long before the news turned to something that he felt is a lot more important to listen to. In other news today, the criminal known as the Penguin has been transferred once more to Arkham Asylum following his latest attempt to steal a number of priceless relics from a recent excavation in South America what were being stored in the Gotham Museum. The former socialite turned criminal was foiled by Batman and Robin during his attempt. And while it had been a difficult chase, he and his henchmen were apprehended and locked up by the two, as well as preventing damage to the relics. Images of the criminal in question actually made Naruto raise an eyebrow. This guy was nowhere near as freaky as that Akatsuki swordsman named Kisame or that snake-summoning bastard Orochimaru and that zombie bounty hunter of Akatsuki who was the victim of his prototype Rentrikan decades ago. But this penguin guy certainly looked like the flightless bird he read about in the internet and at the library he at times went to just to keep himself informed, and like the ones he had seen near the land of Snow Spring. But unlike said birds that he found to be funny and at times cute, this guy was downright creepy and also looked like someone who not only needed to be on a diet, but needed to spend a whole life sentence on a deserted island and away from the populace. There's an idea. Maybe I should to the Hiroshian technique and take all the bad guys to an island way off the map and let them figure out just how they are going to survive. But despite how tempting the idea was, he decided to place it aside for now since that was no doubt going to be a problem. The methods in which this world dealt with criminals confused him at times, since in his reality criminals were usually divided into two categories with different punishments. The civilian criminals back in his world were usually dealt in a fashion by the cage and were punished depending on the severe ity of their crimes. Though that was only in the hidden villages, and those who were not part of the hidden villages were dealt with by those who were placed into positions of power by the feudal lords and by civilian officials. The other category of criminals were the missing nin, who were quickly placed on the bingo book. This book was the source of information on renegade ninja and just what were their crimes and the bounties that were placed on them by the officials. Of course, the bingo book was different for each land. And while there were criminals listed there were also enemy ninjas who had done things to warrant them being placed in the bingo book. And usually ninja who encountered ninjas who were listed in said bingo book would be given the authority to take them down either for capture or kill. But that was not recommended for ninja who were high-ranked. S-rank ninja in the bingo book were to be engaged with extreme caution. A large number of highly skilled ninja were assembled, or when the ninja pursuing said target was an S-rank ninja, as we. Na decided not to delve into that any further, as he decided to go and finish his food and drink. Once his food was there before him, he went to work and enjoyed his food as best he could. He would have gone for ramen, but this was good enough. And besides, he had no idea if there was a ramen stand anywhere in the city. Hence the need for him to get a map and explore the city soon. He also kept his senses alert on the chance that some nut might decide to try and rob the place. The last thing he wanted was a replay of his time in that place in LA. Thankfully, it seemed that the majority of criminals that called Gotham their home had other ideas or had bigger fish to fry. As soon as he was done and paid his bill, he moved out to find a place to call home, though he had an idea that he was willing to try just to make sure that he did not get into trouble. He decided to find a nice place to call his base of operations and get there to do some work on what he was going to do in Gotham, but he had a feeling that sooner or later he was going to meet some very interesting people. But before all of that, he needed to get some shutye, tour the city a bit, and when he got a map, go out and do some aggressive recon, not to mention do some shopping to buy some new supplies and equipment with his money that he might be in need of in the future. Back in Metropolis, Clark Kent normally was very calm and level-headed, but today he was a bit tense, or rather more than tense, triumph impatient. As much as he was relieved that no one on the planet had gotten a tip about his identity or anyone in the other news and gossip agencies, that did not make him feel any better. The Hokage had pretty much faded away from the scene, as he had only made very few appearances in Metropolis before being gone for at least 2 weeks. Perry had been trying to find leads since he was curious as to who this hero was and why was it he was moving about the war. When he should be in LA. Clark was happy that his identity was not exposed, but that did not mean that the discovery that someone else apart from his family and Batman, Bruce, knew he was Superman, was not easy to deal with. Kara was insistent that they find the Hokage and get some details straight and find out just how he found out his identity. And she had good reasons, but so far the man was off the radar, and not a single sighting of him had been made. Most would have thought that the Hokage had gone back to La, but there was no sighting of him there either, so that meant that he was still moving around. Where are you, Hokage? Clark was tempted to go to Bruce and see if he had possibly heard of this Hokage, since he knew Bruce would want to keep an eye on matters that were of concern, but he decided against it since there had been no mention of the Hokage in Gotham. And if he was there, Bruce would have informed him, even more so since Bruce would not be the kind to let someone just appear in his city. For now, he was busy with his life as Clark Kent, and he intended to keep it that way. But the best he could hope for was a chance to learn more about the mysterious Hokage and how he had learned about his true identity, and if possible, hear about any new happenings that can be linked to the blonde masked figure who had deduced his identity. 2 days later, Na was in his combat clothing and was now moving over the buildings as he ran over the rooftops of the city. The shinobi could not help but admit that the city was filled to the brim with activity. Most of the time the nightlife were the negative kind. But he was keen to see just what the city was going to be like and possibly run into any of the criminals. As he got over another building, he began to run up the nearby wall and got to the top and scanned the city. He looked around his current location and then sat down on the cross-legged position and began to summon the natural energy, and found to his slight disgust that the energy here in the city was a more than a bit tainted. Industry normally did not bother the natural flow of energy, but the ninja noted that heavily industrialized cities had a tendency to taint the natural energy in and around their area. But he placed that out of the side since now was not the time for him to think about the mess. He was in senjutsu mode in a mere moment and began to scan the chakra signatures in the city. There were a lot of them and it was going to be a bit before he sorted them out, and he decided to get on the move and see just what and possibly who he was going to see. He moved over some of the buildings and soon he spotted the flashing or lights that were red and blue, the universal color of the police in his experience. And judging by the number of said lights, this meant that something was going down. And he had a feeling that he might meet Batman or possibly some of the more colorful criminals. He had managed to get a dossier of the criminals that called this Gothic city home. Though what Gothic meant, he had absolutely no clue. His files on the criminals that called this place home had some very interesting people. One was a man going by the name of Bane. A guy who apparently was one heck of a bodybuilder and had a serious use for a drug called Venom. Seeing an image of that guy had him thinking about all the muscle-bound ninja he had fought before, who despite their size, sometimes had some wicked speed. Apparently, he was also rather smart, a deadly mix of brawn and brains, though he was supposedly a mercenary assassin. Naruto had little liking for that kind since despite his people being trained as assassins, they only got to that stage if they were contracted to kill someone who was very important or too dangerous, and they usually were allied to the village. Mercenaries were looked down on by a good number of loyal ninjas since they were highly untrustworthy and certainly not someone one worked with unless they had some very steep pockets. Even the samurai in the Land of Iron hated them, and those of the group who did turn rogue and become mercenaries were treated even worse. Still, fighting the guy was going to be promising. The other guy was man who went by the name of Joker. A deranged madman who dressed in the worst getup Naruto had ever seen. Guy who wears makeup and also clothes of green and purple as well as acting like a super creepy verse. Ion of Orochimaru. What kind of sick nut acts like that and dresses like that in public? Still, this guy certainly had brains to mix with the craziness, having held Gotham for ransom more than once and had really given a lot of the police headaches in trying to deal with him. And the way this guy treated his victims filled the former Hokage with a great deal of disgust, and that was something since Na usually tried to change people with the marked exception of those who are truly irredeemable. If he was given a chance, he would silence the bastard personally. But for now, he was going to let Batman deal with the nut. There were others, but these two were certainly interesting. The first was Selena Kyle, who was a very attractive blonde woman who could easily turn heads and make most men Ho had little control over themselves, drool or think less than gentle thoughts. He, however, could tell that she was not just a luscious figure and a pretty face. She was known as Catwoman, a thief who certainly had the looks to suit the name. She was a woman who advocated the protection of animals, namely cats, and before she had been arrested, had been a high roller in Gotham society and courted by a lot of guys, one being said playboy Bruce Wayne. She was apparently caught by Batman, and despite being a thief, she seemed to be willing to fight other criminals as she had tangled a terrorist group with Batman that eventually led to her being captured by said man. All because she wanted to stop them from taking land that was to be a nature preserve. And while she was released on probation for stopping said terrorists, there was no doubt in Naruto's mind that this was one woman he disliked the idea of being kept locked away. Even if he had only done some preliminary research on her, his time in being a Hokage and his years of experience told him that she was possibly getting frustrated at not being allowed to live the way she wanted to live. And that was something he could relate to since he had always been placed in a situation where he could not be himself. Still, stealing was stealing and considered to be a crime in this reality as well as his own. Though if she stole from corrupt and foolish criminal bosses and high society people, then he was not going to stop her in any way, shape or form. Only when she harmed others who were not even part of the problem would he stop her if he met her. The next person was a certain woman who had one heck of an unhealthy obsession with plants and had the more than fitted name of Poison Ivy. The woman was named Doctor for Pamela Ely and was rumored to have been one heck of a botanist in her day and cared a great deal for nature. She apparently had been involved in some form of accident that somehow gave her the ability to command plants, release some form of pheromone that could arouse people and create poisons of a sort in her own body. The one thing that he did not like was said accident supposedly made her unable to have kids, which as far as he knew was a fate most women would have considered worse than death. Still, the woman was undeniably attractive, especially with that get-up she usually wore when she did her work. Now, that is one heck of a killer babe with a green thumb. Poison Ivy had more than her fair shares of being stopped by Batman and had been locked up in a place called Arkham Asylum. This place was some sort of hospital and holding center for the criminally insane and dangerous. In his mind, the nuts he dealt with would have felt right at home there, Toby and Kabuto included. The difference was with this green-loving babe was the fact that unlike the other loons and scum, she had no interest in money and usually did her actions to attack people who had committed actions that were attacks on nature, at least to her perspective. And when the word attack was used, that included using lethal force either with her poisons or her pet plants. She was also rumored to be friends with one criminal woman going by the name of Harley Quinn. But so far he had no idea who she was at the moment. So that was going to be placed aside for the time being as he saw that there was some activity at the other side of the city. He spotted a figure moving through the shadows, and since Batman was recorded to have a cape, this was not Batman as he did not see a cape. He moved quickly and quietly as best he could while keeping to the shadows to make sure that he did not alert his quarry. Once he was close enough, he spotted the figure break into a nearby tower, which looked like it belonged to some very rich fellow. And when he managed to get a glimpse of his target, once the figure came back out, he could not help but grin behind his mask. Hello, at said tower, Selina sighed as she took the jewels and placed in her sash. She had half expected Batman to show up again to stop her. But with Bane causing havoc alongside Riddler, as she had heard on the police bandwave, the chances of that happening were slim. And despite the fact she knew that she was skirting the limits of her probation from being Catwoman, this was on a chance she was not going to let go. Besides, the necklace belonged to a businessman who she knew made his money over the trade of tiger skins, so double impact for her. The beautiful cat burglar patted the bag and spoke with a measure of relief as she knew that she was in the clear. Looks like I'm finally getting away scot-free tonight. That was when another voice came on the scene behind Selina. You might want to rethink that statement, miss. Catwoman turned, and there behind her was a man dressed in an outfit of orange and black like a ninja and wearing a black short-sleeved wrench coat with red flames on it. The guy wore a mask and some form of headband with a metal plate on the front and had a strange leafy K symbol on it. She raised an eyebrow since the man was actually standing on a nearby pole upside down. And she could tell that there was nothing holding him on said pole, which made her all the more curious. And while she knew the saying, curiosity killed the cat, she knew cats had 9 lives as a saying, too. Nar grinned again behind his mask as he got a very good look at Selina Kyle and spoke once more. Considering the getup you have, I can wager a safe bet you're Catwoman. And I can easily say the name does you justice. Selina was curious who this guy was, as this was definitely not Batman, and most certainly not Robin or that one named Nightwing, and decided to speak next. And who are you? I'm the Hokage. And before you ask why I am here, I'm taking a tour of the city just to see what this place is like. And as far as I can see, the nightlife is pretty exciting. And despite the fact I am upside down, the view before me is certainly nice. Selina could easily see this guy was actually flirting with her. A surprise since that did not happen often. Usually, it was her who did the flirting, though only to distract people such as Batman when she felt it was better to flee than stay. She decided to smile back and watch as the man moved away from the pole, walking on it and then moving to flip and land on the ledge like a skilled acrobat. That made Selina raise an eyebrow, as that was rather interesting and, despite herself, somewhat impressive. Are you flirting with me, Hokage? I thought heroes like you usually waste no time catching crooks like me. Nar mentally snickered at that and replied, that's true, and I do plan to try and convince you to give those jewels back, but that does not mean I can't enjoy the company, right? Selina raised an eyebrow at this guy. He was actually flirting with her, and maybe that could be his weakness. If he was easily attracted to her, then she might be able to play him. She smiled and beckoned to him with a finger. Naruto decided to do it, and as he was close, she spoke to him while reaching for her whip. Sure, but you should know something about cats, Hokage. And what is that? We have sharp claws. Selina slashed at Naruto, and Nar reeled back as she then attacked him with several attacks, managing to hit his mask and crack it, forcing him back until he moved away that she felt the distance would do. And she quickly moved with her whip and left the scene. She moved as quickly as she can, unaware that Naruto was not dissuaded, but he merely grinned and soon reached for a special cane of his. Karma. As soon as she had some distance from the man on a rooftop and was near a tall wall on said roof, she looked back and saw that he was not following her. She sighed and spoke to herself. He's not bad-al looking body-wise, but he's no bad man and did not even try to catch me. But she got a surprise when she turned and was face-to-face with Naruto, who quickly moved forward until she hit the wall bay. In her and the mask fell off, revealing his face. Selina saw herself looking at a young but definitely handsome-looking blonde with blue eyes that had a lupine quality. There were several whisker-like marks on his cheeks that added to the look, and his toothy grin revealed slightly sharper than normal. Mal canines. That made her feel some surprise as she had not expected that, and despite the fact that his face was revealed, the Hokage did not seem to be troubled at all. Na then spoke to her. Nice try, little cat. But I also go by another name, and that is Fox. And foxes like me are very cunning and we're damn persistent when we chase something. So, are we going to the part where we fight for real? Or where you give up the jewels? Or you can try another way of making me lower my guard and get away with Sedja. Wells, all three sound really nice to me, though the third option might be more fun. Na then sniffed a bit and grinned more as he spoke. Nice perfume, by the way. Certainly suits you, even more so with the sweat mixed in, Catwoman. So, what's it going to be? That sent shivers up Selena's spine even though she could not know why, or she thought she did. As this was the first time a man was this aggressive with her when it came flirting, as Batman was the impassive type, but she was not going to let this chance to escape again. How this guy managed to get past her and be there was a mystery, but that had to wait. She gave him a grin and spoke once more while moving to press her hands on his chest. You're pretty good there, Hokage, but aren't you worried that I know what you look like without your mask? Na did not seem fazed by that and replied, don't think I don't know your real name, Catwoman. Or better yet, Miss Selena Kyle, I might look like a kid, but I assure you I am no simple idiot. Besides, all it takes is for you to be revealed to have gone back to being Catwoman and they lock you away for a long time and throw away the key. So, how are we going to play this? Selena managed to smile, yet, she was not the least bit happy that she had been found out by this guy. Everyone who was in the know already knew that she was Catwoman, but she was still hoping to do this to live the way she wanted to live without anyone figuring out. But this guy had just caught her and now she was in trouble. Unless she could convince him to let her go and forget that they ever met. You tell me, Hokage, you certainly know who I am. So, you have me at a disadvantage. She ran her hand on his chest and then moved to his face, which despite her self-control, she found to be well-formed and hardened like Batman's, and she could not help but reach for the face as well. The marks on his cheeks made her wonder if it was merely tattoos or these were possibly inherited. Na grinned even more as Selena was doing her best to lay on the charm. And she was really going for it as it was. But he was already making his move while Selena was laying on the charm and decided to let this little cat and mouse, or rather cat and fox game come to an end. But not before seeing just how far he could take it. I know. So tell you what, why don't we try a competition? Oh. Yep. Here's how it's going to be. You try to rob a different place in 3 days without getting caught by Batman and the cops, but avoid me finding you. If I find you, try to evade me quickly and get to pier number 19 in Gotham Harbor and avoid having me switch your loot with something else harmless but worthless to you while you try to fight or evade me. If you can do 3 times in a row, then you win, and I will not bother you again, nor will I stop you from what you love doing. Selena raised an eyebrow at that and replied, really? Care to tell me why? Hokage. Naruto grinned. And then to Selena's slight shock, the man touched her lips and her chin with his fingers and spoke with a very husky tone into her right ear. Way I see it, Miss Kyle, you're not a full-time villain. You don't kill, sell drugs, weapons, or people, kidnap, and all those other things criminals do. You only rob people, and that usually pertains to corrupt, petty people who do something that offends you. And even if you do rob them, you don't kill unless you have no choice. And you also happen to have a kindness towards animals if what I read about you is right on the money when it concerns wildlife, namely cats. Plus, you did save this city from a terrorist attack and that wins points in my book. The only time I might take offense to your passion for being the seductive thief that you are is when you rob the hardworking, industrious, and actually respectable people in this city. You live your life the way you want. You want freedom and the chance to be yourself. I can respect that easily since I want to have freedom to in my own way and not be forced by others to live the way they want me to live. In that sense, you can say that in some fashion you and I are a bit similar, though I am no thief like you. If you want to keep doing this without being found out, try to keep up with me here, Catwoman. Selena had to admit that this was the first time she met someone who understood her lifestyle and her wants. However, She was still going to be very wary of him since she knew that going in without seeing all the angles was a bad idea from the beginning. And if you win, what then? Na then grabbed her by the hips with one hand, much to her surprise, though she hid it well and spoke once more as he touched her chin again with the other. If I win the first day, then I get to see your face. Sure, I've seen the pictures, but images don't do justice to seeing the face in the flesh, so to speak. Besides, it's only fair since you've seen my face already. And what happens on the second day if you win Hokage? Na enjoyed that as he rubbed his left hand on her hip slowly before speaking. Simple. I ask you out on a date and I'm paying. That made Selena raise an eyebrow as that was something she did not expect. You want to ask me out on a date? Of course, a date. A simple lunch and dinner date. And I am paying this time with my own money. There's nothing in your files that say you can't have a social life, right? And no, I am not going to take you to bed or anything like that. I just want to know you and why you chose this life since we're both in this case on opposing sides of a spectrum. I am just curious. And besides, I happen to have a high respect for women. So, the only time I would take you to bed is if you allow me to, and only if you and I have enough time to know one another. You can always go home afterwards, and I won't stalk you. Just a willing man and woman on a social get-together. And the last day. Na laughed a bit and switched places with Selena as he was now on the wall. But this time he had both hands on his hips and moved them to her back. That made Selena take in a brief gasp of air as she looked at the man who was flirting with her in a very aggressive fashion. That's when I asked you to pose for a few pictures. That got Selena's attention and in a not so good way as she looked at him hard and with a frown on her face. What did you say? Na laughed gently and replied. Not in that way, though a guy can certainly dream about it. No, just some pictures in a set of clothes that you can feel comfortable with. Knowing your social standing before you got busted as Catwoman by a certain tall, dark, and brooding dude with a rather creepy attachment to flying mammals, you rebound to have a few dresses here and there. I would be lying though if I said that I don't like to see you in a swimsuit. One or two pieces up to you, though. I recommend black since you would obviously look good in it. After that, I will pretty much leave you alone for the rest of the time I am here in Gotham, which might not be for very long anyway. And if I refuse, then you reveal to them that I was being Catwoman again, right? Pretty much so. Balls in your court, Catwoman. Selena decided to make her move as she smiled at the Hokage and moved to kiss him as she spoke to his lips while running her hands on his body again. You drive a hard game, but tell me, do you really think that you can win this competition? I caught you off guard, didn't I? Perhaps, but a cat always manages to escape. And this time, so will I. With that, she quickly pushed him back and took out a small number of smoke pellets and tossed it at Na. The smoke was blinding, but she quickly turned away and escaped. Or so she thought as when she left the building. Naruto merely blew the smoke away with a blast of chakra-enhanced wind and moved to see Catwoman on the move yet again, but enjoyed the sight of her retreating form and whistled appreciate. Ively at the view before turning around. He was going to let her go for now. After all, this was merely the foreplay and he had something to return as well. Later, Selena sighed a bit as she looked around, hoping that it was all over and she could finally get away with her prize. That Hokage guy, however, did not make it the least bit easy for her, as that was certainly something she had not readied herself for. The guy was both aggressive and rather forward, as he had actually responded with placing his hands on her hips and even had the audacity to touch her back. Plus, that competition he had in mind. Get a grip, Selena. Time to go. You've got the jewels. Though the blonde thief was shocked when she checked her sash and found that instead of the jewels she took, there was a stuffed frog doll in her pack and it had a letter in the chest. She took it off and saw that it was a message. Nice try, but better luck next time. And just so you know, this was a dry run. The real competition starts next week, or in this case at least 4 days from now. So better shape up and get the rest of your joints okay because you are about to get a heck of a workout. P.S. I'm sending the jewels back and I will alert security this time, so feel free to come and get them if you want. Hero Selena turned and shook her head in slight anger and slight amusement. All tea. His time when she thought she finally had the advantage. The kid had actually switched the jewels with this plush toy, and she had thought that her actions had finally worked in letting her get away, but instead she was the one who got robbed, and despite her anger at what happened, she had to give the young man credit for the slip. She turned to see that there was no sign of the Hokage anywhere, meaning that he had escaped, and that meant that the competition was on between them. I am so not going to lose to you, young man. A day later, Naruto cracked a grin as he read the latest bit of news. Apparently, the reason Batman was not around to catch Catwoman was he was dealing with Bane and Riddler. How those two managed to get themselves working together, he would never know. But he did not mind. And while Kurama had expressed a level of interest in fighting this Bane character, he turned down that idea. The thought of breaking into Arkham and being around all those loons and nut jobs just to find one sucked up criminal and fight him for the entertainment value was not in his mind right now. At the moment, he was currently on his way to grab some takeout food from where he was staying. The chance to bring a good meal into his guts was welcome, but he was annoyed by the fact that he could not find a decent ramen restaurant anywhere. The Gothamites, as they were called, seemed to be fairly interesting in his mind, and he was pleased to see that despite the fact that their city did not have a very stellar reputation due to the crime rates, they were proud of their home. Kurama, however, had a less than stellar liking for the city as he spoke. This place is one of the strangest cities thus far, I suppose. So, anyway, we should get ready for another interesting night. Hope we can run into more company in the city. HMPH, I hope that we can finally see just what this Batman is capable of. Anyway, are you sure that you did the right thing in letting that very attractive woman go like that last night? You mean Selina Kyle, right? Yeah, I mean, seriously, Naruto, she was fine and certainly looks good in the clothes. Not like the women in your past, but certainly comes close. For all you know, both of you could have made quite a set. Not to mention the fact that she would have been one heck of a lady in the sack. I swear you sound like the pervy sage. And that's supposed to be a bad thing considering the fact that you yourself are quite the pervert and don't bother denying it because we both know it's true. Besides, if you decide to go for it, your experiences when it comes to the bedroom might really make her happy. She might very well join you willingly since you don't happen to be so uptight with the law and all. Ha, yeah, well, no sense crying over spilled milk, as they say. Besides, we've got another week before we leave this place. And besides, that encounter is going to give me a lot of data to make the next novel. Kurama snorted a bit and replied before going to sleep. Yeah, well, novels and books don't come close to doing the real thing with a woman, or more than one woman, as you already know. Na could not help but agree to the truth. In Kurama's words, nothing beat actually doing with it a willing woman, or in his case, more than one willing woman. Then again, even after being married, his former sensei Kakashi never got rid of the books, and Ayami certainly didn't mind. He was willing to wager a guess that Kakashi used the books that Jera made to spice up his love life with Ayami. The blonde placed the thoughts aside as he ate his food and then headed back to his hideout to get some work done. The blonde shinobi was more than willing to get a chance to meet any other new figures in Gotham, though he was hoping to see if he was going to meet Batman and his crew to see just what this guy was about. Once he got to the hideout, he began to work and also plan something on the off chance he was discovered. Later that night, Na was currently using his Senjutsu chakra once more as he was on the highest tower in Gotham while balancing himself on a thin sheet of marble on the tip of the tower. This allowed him to scan the city section by section since that was needed due to the nature of the flow of natural energy in the place. He was looking forward to the chance to have that competition with Selina Kyle since she was good and a test of skill was something he did look forward to. Of course, Kurama had other ideas at the time and he could not help but shake his head at some of the suggestions his demonic resident and still slightly reluctant partner had towards the woman. It would have been a lie though that he did not find those same suggestions very interesting and he had to keep those from conjuring perverted ideas into his head. But for now, he was going to indulge them at a later date since he now had to go and see if he could find out what was going on in the city. He soon got up and fired a chakra chain to move to the next building below. And as soon as he swung away, he headed from building to building. That was when he spotted someone, or rather 3 people moving over the rooftops. That piqued Naruto's interest as he began to move in the shadows while making sure to keep the three on sight. He moved close enough to finally see them and he grinned. Well, now if it isn't the Batman himself, certainly looks the part in the name, and that must be his accomplices. He moved ever closer to see both Robin and Batgirl. He had read the data that he could find and knew that both Robin and Batgirl were accomplished fighters and were part of the team. Though there was another named Nightwing, he had not seen that guy as of yet, but decided to shove that thought aside for now as he kept watch on the three. All the while making sure to be silent, and still not an easy thing for him considering his personality, but he had learned enough to get by. So far, Batman did not react, and when he used his senjutsu senses, he could tell that they had not found him yet. Once they were clear, the blonde shinobi followed him as they reached a warehouse which appeared to be occupied. He wagered a guess that the people who were there were not the law-abiding kind. And as he moved through the shadows behind Batman and his group, he was able to see them in action. He saw how Batman fought, and the taijutsu stance that the man was using was more than enough to tell him that Batman was well trained. The way the guy moved spoke of intense training and discipline as well as years of experience. He did not try to just power through a foe. He was intelligent, patient, cunning, and also agile. Despite the build the guy had, Naruto nodded in approval as Batman continued to fight several of the crooks attacking him as he switched his attention to the others. Robin appeared to be less disciplined yet was unpredictable in his attack style. So, that told Na that the young man had some street fighting background to him, though tempered, no doubt, by his boss's training methods and tactics. But Na did notice that the guy was a bit too overzealous and a bit too forceful as well, in his attacks. The guy could recover well enough, but that action still left him vulnerable to counterattack as one of the thugs managed to get close enough to grab him in a bear hug from behind. Robin managed to free himself and knock the guy down, but Na could tell that he was still going to be needing improvement. As for Batgirl, Na had to give her credit for the look as well as her fighting skills. Apparently, she had been trained well in taijutsu and no doubt had prior training in self-defense before being the costumed fighter that she was. And considering the way the various criminal elements that called this city home, he was hardly surprised by the fact that she had to defend herself on a regular basis. He watched them fight the thugs and he could tell that they were more than experienced in fighting side by side and alone. Though he could guess that Batman was the more seasoned of the whole group, being the senior. In this case, Batman was like a Jonin and the two were either Genin or Chunin had they been born in his world. It was there and then that he sensed something was about to happen and he decided that now was the time to go in and make a move of his own. Barbara was not going to like this as she managed to knock down the thug while fighting alongside Batman and Robin, who were also dealing with their own foes. The smuggling ring they had busted up happened to be well armed, and while some of them had been taken out by her and the others, the rest were putting up a heck of a fight. Unknown to her, however, one of the thugs had snuck up to a crane that was carrying a number of crates and then cut at the net with a knife. Robin spotted him and quickly tossed one of his Robin-themed boomerangs at the man. It was enough to knock the guy out, but the now weakened net tore up and down came the crates. Batman saw the two and shouted to Barbara, "Batgirl, move." Barbara looked up and her eyes widened at the sight as she saw the crates coming down. She tried to move, but the shock had temporarily stopped her from reaching for her grappling gun or to move away. However, she was not going to be lost under the crates or killed, as a certain someone made his very own move to help her from her predicament. The last thing she saw was large amount of smoke, and then she was being held bridal style in someone's arms. She looked to see herself looking at a face covered by a mask that had a fox-like appearance and a metal plate on the forehead area with a strange leafy K symbol in the metal. Barbara was quite shocked by this and heard the massive crash turned into her surprise. She was at least 3 stories up where the crates could have crushed her into nothing but pulp. She looked back at the figure and managed to find her voice and spoke. "Ah, thanks. No problem, miss. Hold on." That was her only warning as the guy leapt from the beams and began to move down. And as soon as they landed, another thug charged, but the new arrival quickly reacted by leaping forward with her still in his arms and smashed a kick into the face, sending the guy down and placing her to the floor. He then turned and, to her surprise, took out what appeared to be ninja throwing stars and tossed them at the next attacker, who was armed with a pipe. That managed to stop him and pin him to the wall. Another attacker came, and she turned to fight back, only for the masked being to move and block the incoming crowbar with what appeared to be some sort of diamond-shaped metallic knife. She then saw it actually shimmer a bit, and the crowbar was suddenly cut as her rescuer then unleashed a powerful sidekick that sent the man flying to the side and right into a number of crates, showing that this fellow with the fox mask was a lot stronger than he actually looked. All of that was in a span of a few seconds as well, and it was not long before the smuggler thugs were down and out. It was here that Batman was accompanied by Robin and was now before the masked ninja. Barbaro was soon moving to the side and was with Batman and Robin. Na could already see that he was now being assessed by Batman. This guy was very good, and after what he had seen, he could easily tell that Batman had been trained extensively in taijutsu and enjutsu. Though he doubted that this world's version ninjas had the same level of ability as the ninjas of his world. He also had no doubt that Batman was going to come in hard on him and try to get some answers out of him when he saw a chance. And he was right as Batman spoke. "You're the Hogue." Narrat tried to lighten the mood, though he had a feeling that the guy in black was not going to rise to the bait as it were. Good guess, Batman. Shame I can't give you a reward for the guess. You willing to take an IOU? Robin and Batgirl were surprised by the way the guy was talking to Bruce. It was as if he was not bothered by the fact that Bruce was giving him the third degree. Bruce himself was not amused and sternly glared at the man before him. Still, he noted that despite the attitude, the Hokage was also watching him intently. The body language did not give anything away, and that alone was telling to him, as the only way someone could do that was when the person was very well trained and experienced. Whoever this Hokage was, there was no doubt in Bruce's mind that he was someone who merely dressed up as a ninja. And the way he used the ninja stars and that knife told Bruce that this guy was a veteran fighter with some serious strength and stamina. But right now, he was in the mood to get some answers. "What are you doing here in Gotham?" "Just passing through. I ain't here to steal your thunder or that of your running partners. I was just cruising along the area when I saw what was going down and decided to observe the whole thing. Only decided to get involved with the whole thing when your lady partner was about to be turned into a mess on the floor. That got Bruce's attention, as that meant that the whole time he, Barbara, and Tim were fighting, this guy had been watching them. He had trained himself to have a very high level of situational awareness, and his years of training and experience only made it stronger. To know that this guy had been here the whole time and had not gotten his attention was enough to tell him that this guy was very well trained and possibly expert. Irons to a level that was above normal. Whoever trained him was good. But that still does not mean that I am going to let him go scot-free. Really, I saw the news when you showed up in La and then in Metropolis, and I can tell that you are no ordinary person. Na decided to try an experiment and spoke seriously in Japanese. He had a feeling that if Batman had been trained by a ninja master, then knowing the language was going to be second nature to him. "You have no idea how different I am, Batman. But I can bet that as you were trained by a ninja master, you already guessed that, didn't you?" And sure enough, Batman did not disappoint Naruto, as he responded in Japanese. "It didn't. The way you fought and moved tell me you are no mere kid. You were trained not by some simple martial artist, but a top-ranked assassin, and no doubt you had other teachers as well. You also showed that you have strong combat experience and reflexes. Only way you could earn that level of skill is not just through training alone, but by being placed in situations that demanded skill and innovation. And because of that, I can bet that you have been doing those things for years until you can do it without conscious thought." Na grinned at that and replied, "Good. You're issued as I read in the news, Batman, and I can tell that you trained your two companions personally, though I can bet that they still have a long way to go to reach your level. Your master was no doubt a very good man and someone you respected a great deal and was a good influence to you. Now the question in my mind is what you are going to do now with me. It should be obvious that I have to make sure that you are not a threat in disguise. I don't trust you one bit. Hokage, you really need to loosen up. Yano, considering what you know about me already, do you really think that I am going to go with you quietly? I ain't got any issue with you, but if you want to try and stop me, you're welcome to try." Barbara and Tim looked at the two in utter annoyance and confusion, since none of them had taken a Japanese language course for different reasons, and thus they were not able to understand the conversation. But it was obvious to the two that both the Hokage and Batman were studying each other very carefully. No doubt waiting for them to make one move that could change the whole situation in a heartbeat. That was when Barbara spoke. "Hey, not to butt in or anything, but how is it you got to me so fast and get me away from the crates?" Na grinned and moved over to the crates and moved some away, showing some of his strength, and to the surprise of the heroes. Where Barbara was before was a battered and cracked log. The blonde then replied to the question of the redhead as he knew that she was in need of an explanation. "I used a special jutsu to get you out of the way. It was a basic move that is basically taught to all ninja and quite possibly familiar to your tall, dark, and brooding boss over there. I switched this log for you and got you out of the way, and you were there in my arms. I would have to be a seriously stupid adult to let a very strong and nice-looking lady being reduced into a pancake." Barbara could not help but raise an eyebrow as she could sense that the guy was flirting with her. And that was a bit surprising, as the only one who did that was the former Robin, now Nightwing, was currently setting up shop outside of Gotham. And while they were still on very good terms with one another, it was a bit of a strain between their relationship that they were apart. "Okay, so what do you do with you?" "Well, way I see it, you three can either let me go since we're pretty much on the same side. Or you both can do things your boss's way since he plans to take me away for questioning since he apparently has major trust issues towards the new people." Tim and Barbara looked at Bruce and he nodded. "We can't be too sure about his intentions or who he is." Barbara and Tim knew that Bruce did have a point and looked to face Na, who was already working on how to get away before the situation went down south. The two looked at him and Batman was already getting ready on the off chance that Na did something. Na did something all right, but not in the way that the three expected, as he moved at amazing speed and yanked out his swords and jammed them into the ground. As he did so, he channeled his wind chakra and shouted out, "Futon Rowan KS." The attack unleashed a sphere of pure wind that catches the 3 OFFG guard as they were suddenly blasted by wind forces that were category 3 in strength. That forced them back a fair distance to the point they had to use the grappling ropes to hold on the supports. The dust and debris blinded them as Narrat finally spoke. "Sorry about that, but there's no freaking way that I am going to let myself get caught by anyone just yet. Bye." Na then aimed upward as he placed his swords away. The three only saw a glowing chain suddenly lash up, and soon the man left the area as the wind died down. As soon as things seemed to calm down a bit more, they got away from where they all had anchored themselves and soon moved to find NETR. Ace of the Hokage. But they were not able to find any trace of the man. Now, Batman wiped his eyes a bit and looked at the place where Naruto had been and knew that they were going to be in for a very interesting time. It was here that the police came in, and that was the signal for him, Tim, and Barbara, to move out of the area and get away from the regular police. They soon met with Commissioner Gordon, who was surprised to find out that someone else had come in on the scene, and from Batman's description, and hat of Robin and Batgirl, he was quick to guess just who it was. "The Hokage is here." "Yes, but we lost sight of him, so I believe it would be best we be watchful. Then he's not exactly the kind of person who one can ignore without good reason." Batman talked with Gordon more, and soon they were off to the Batcave, as he had a lot to talk about with the two. The way that Hokage fought was more than convincing to Batman that he was no simple kid and was possibly a lot older than he looked. His memories of his encounters with Talia's father, Razagal, told him that if there is something odd about someone, it usually was not too good. Once they got there, Tim took off his mask and spoke in a serious tone, though with some annoyance as he rubbed his back from the sudden attack of wind. "Man, what the heck was that he used on us? I felt like I got caught in a twister all of a sudden." Barbara nodded in agreement as she spoke next. "Same here. Could he have some sort of alien like Kara and Clark? Or is he a metahuman with wind manipulation powers?" Bruce took off his cowl and shook his head a bit. "No. As far as records show, most if not all metahumans don't have to do those things like jamming swords into the ground. I doubt that move was for show. And if he was a metahuman, then he would have to be very well trained at that. Government trained and sanctioned maybe." Bruce shook his head at Tim's suggestion, as despite the way things looked, the government would not allow that. Plus the fact that the man spoke Japanese with some strange accent told him that the US government was not part of it. Plus everything about the Hokage screamed ninja training, though the choice of orange in his ensemble as well as red made Bruce even more curious. I doubt it. The government does not have a hand in this. Besides that, the weapons he carried were well made, with these being different. They don't sell this in novelty stores after all. These look better and possibly handcrafted as well as sharpened. Bruce referred to the shuriken they recovered earlier as he took them for the dusting of prints. He needed to know if this guy was recorded in the national and international database, and soon. But he was surprised to find that there were no fingerprints, meaning that he was not going to get anywhere in that avenue. After some time in figuring out his plans on how to deal with the Hokage, he spent some time putting Barbara and Tim through some simulations, much to their chagrin. Thankfully, it was not too long as he gave them the chance to unwind and get some much-needed sleep. Tim was quick to head up and chat with Alfred and get some food and drink before getting some shutye, while Barbara did the same before she would head home. After all, she did have a life outside of being Batgirl. Bruce checked the news and saw that as clockwork, word of the Hokage's arrival was released to the public of Gotham and the rest of the world. There was no doubt in his mind that Clark was going to soon pay him a visit. After all, he had encountered the Hokage already, so some input from the Kryptonian was a must if they were going to solve the mystery on who the Hokage was and what were his plans and intentions. As for Naruto, he was currently getting himself ready for the chance to finally cross paths with Selena and possibly have some fun while he was here. He made sure, however, to get as much shutye as he could and also update his work, as he had gotten an email from his editor that there were increasing demands for more of his work. Once that was out of the way, after several hours, the blonde decided to go and grab some much-needed shutye for what was to come to him, in Wayne Manor. The next day, Bruce was currently awake and doing the usual routine of running the company and making the calls. It was here that he was waiting for someone to show up, someone he had called to come to Gotham for a very important purpose. And it was not long before Alfred appeared and spoke to the billionaire. "Master Bruce, Mr. Clark Kent has arrived." Bruce nodded as Clark appeared as the Kryptonian then spoke to the butler. "Thanks, Alfred. Think nothing of it, Mr. Kent. Would you like some tea and breakfast? You must be tired from the trip." Clark smiled at the butler as he respected Alfred. After all, even though he did not pry into Bruce's life, he could easily tell that Alfred was more than an employed manservant. He placed that aside for the time being as he spoke to Alfred. "Sure, some tea and simple crackers would be nice." Of course, as Alfred left the room, both heroes spoke to one another, with Clark speaking first to Bruce. "I heard that the Hokage was here and I was able to tell Perry about it. So, he sent me here to try and get some news on him. That's the official reason, I take it." "Yeah, the real reason is that he knows who I am, Bruce." That got the attention of the billionaire crime fighter, as he knew that Clark was very capable of hiding his identity for years since he came to Metropole. No one who he did not trust and were close to him knew of his dual identity as Superman. But now, this unknown hero who had some very strange abilities had actually found Clark out. That was a surprising thought, and as much as he did not want to admit it, Bruce was a bit worried. If the Hokage figured that Clark was Superman, there was a chance that he might figure out that he and Batman were one in the same. How exactly did that happen? I have no idea. All I know is that he was able to find out about me only hours after we met. I get the feeling he must have been tracking me for a while though. How he did it without alerting me is shocking." Bruce thought over what he had experienced with the Hokage personally and replied, "Not as shocking as you might think. Me, Tim, and Barbara encountered him last night, and I can tell that despite his teenage form, he's a lot more skilled than he looks. The fact was that he had been observing us the whole time we were dealing with a smuggling ring, and the only time we found him was when he chose to reveal himself. That tells me that whoever trained him was a top-notch assassin, since there's no denying that his skills are like that of a ninja. Possibly he must also have a very high level of control over his body to have been able to avoid your senses, and he possibly had other trainers as well." Both men thought things over as Clark spoke. "What else did you find out?" Bruce took out one of the recovered shuriken and replied, "We recovered this weapon of his from the warehouse when he managed to evade us before I could tag him. This is a traditional ninja shuriken and it's very well made. Good quality steel and specially sharpened for balance and flight along with cutting power. This tells me that he did not buy this in some novelty store. He possibly had this custom-made or forged and sharpened this himself. This shuriken is quality work, similar to the same shuriken used by an old foe of mine, so there's no doubt he was very well trained. Clark took the weapon and could see that Bruce was right. He might not know ninjas all that well, but there was no denying that the weapons was very well made. Bruce then spoke to Clark as he recalled that strange but unique ability the man possessed. He also had the ability to manipulate wind to a degree. We were about to capture him when he used some form of weather manipulation to send me and the others back from him. He's a metahuman. That's possible, but we'll leave that for now. If you plan to find out what you can of him, this is the best time for it. If what he did in Metropolis is any indication, he will not be here for long in Gotham. Clark nodded as he decided to take his time and find a chance to finally speak to the blonde Hokage and figure out just how he had found him out. He had no plans to fight the young man since technically he was not an enemy, but he doubted that Bruce was going to make things that simple or straightforward. The next night, Naruto was busy tracking down some band of crooks just to see how far they were going to go. And he was not the least bit tired yet. He noted something odd about these guys, and that was that while they were acting like regular robbers, what they stole was certainly not regular stuff. A large amount of chemicals and plants, if one can believe that, which was enough to tell him that these guys were not your regular thieves. He had spent the morning working on his novel series and also his manga, and that took most of the morning and afternoon. But as night fell, he decided to go outside and see what was there to do and who he was going to meet. As he watched the thieves move about, he was quite surprised to find them moving into the sewers, and he growled at that. Great, this is one of the times I wished I did not have a nose. That's nothing compared to the view I have to contend with in that old sewer you called your mind. At least you took a different approach, even if I am still in the cage. We're partners, remember Kurama. Now we're going in. Who knows? This might get interesting, right? Na followed the thieves, and as he did so, he also made sure to be thankful that his mask managed to at least guard him from some of the smell. How the people could tolerate these things, he would never know. But he was not going to waste time arguing as he began to think to himself on what was it. These guys were only robbing plants and chemicals. He got his answer as he suddenly spotted them going out of the sewers to go into another one where a massive factory was, and he could see that the factory in question was releasing a fairly bad amount of chemicals into the nearby water. He shook his head and moved after the thieves carefully, and once more entered the sewers, much to his disgust, and soon he found them, only to find them down on the ground and dead, and he saw the marks on their lips that was the sign of poison. That made him raise his eyebrows and he used his senjutsu again to sense the energy around him. Even though it was not easy, he felt a chakra signature and sensed one that felt like a fusion of some sort similar to him when he tapped into nature energy, though there was a plant-like feel to it as well. That was more than enough to tell him that he was dealing with poison ivy this time around. He sighed mentally and headed off to track her down and stop her. He had no idea who owned this place, but considering what he had seen thus far, it was clear to him just what Ivy had in mind for the people who worked in the factory. He, however, could not help but mentally whistle at the sight of the woman as images of the woman did not do her justice. One thing was sure, the femme fatale tag that was given to her was well deserved, especially considering her ability to kill with a touch or kiss when she wanted to do so. He got closer and also could see that she was carrying a container of sorts enough to make him guess that she was soon going to make her move on her foes. And now he was going to make his move. What the heck are you doing here? Oh, this is new. I was expecting Batman and his little posse to deal with me this time around, but I had been keeping myself under the radar the whole time. Now it seems that I have a new visitor. The woman turned and saw the Hokage and Naruto had to raise his eyebrow a bit behind his mask as the woman spoke once more. You are certainly not Batman nor Robin nor Nightwing as the older one calls himself now. And before you say anything, I know who you are, Hokage. Have you now? Well, you can bet that I am not going to let you do what you like. Poison Ivy smirked and replied. I guess that, but apparently you are not very familiar with who I am or what I can do. Now, let's see how you deal with my babies. Na knew what that meant as he did read her profile, but decided to play the naive guy first, as he had an idea on playing some tricks on the woman. That was why he allowed himself to be restrained by the vines that came out of the ground nearby. Poison Ivy smiled a bit as she walked over to the restrained Hokage and enjoyed the chance to finally have someone else in her clutches for a change of pace. She was expecting Batman to try and stop her from using her special seeds to attack the water supply of a factory that was poisoning the waters. Near a plot of land that she felt would be a great site for some wild plants that were very rare in her mind. But instead of the Dark Knight, it was this guy who apparently was not all that familiar with her powers and abilities. Such a shame. The Hokage tried to free himself from her vines as she decided to end him once and for all. She reached for his face, and with him being affected by her neural toxin, she was able to remove his mask. The man was rather handsome, young looking, and she had to admit that the whisker marks on his face made him have a feral look. The guy looked at her with deep blue eyes that also seemed to have a strange but attractive quality in them. So, she had to admit that killing someone like him was a waste, but she was not going to be dissuaded in her mission by anyone. The guy struggled, and she held him by the face and spoke seductively. You should not struggle so much. Take heart in the fact that your last kiss in this life is coming from me and for you. I will make your death slow. The young man glared and she kissed him and allowed her poison to flow into him. She felt his struggles begin to slacken. And when she moved back, the guy looked at her and she saw his eyes glow in defiance and soon faded away as his head dropped to his chest. She sighed and spoke to herself. Shame you had to die, handsome, but I have my mission. You can release him, my darlings. The vines did what she asked and she walked off to do her work, but she was about to discover something about her foe that was totally unexpected. She then heard his voice again, and that stopped her right in her tracks in utter shock. Not a bad kiss, Ivy-chan, but I think that you are using too simple a kissing technique. Have you considered trying a French kiss instead of just pressing your lips? That might work a lot better than you think. Pamela turned around and was shocked to see the man she had kissed and shaded was now standing up there before her, alive and grinning in a very amused fashion. As he moved closer to her, she thought of using her crossbow, but before she could do that, there was a loud screech of metal and she looked at her weapon and found out that the triggering mechanism was destroyed by a large metallic needle. She tried to use her fist, but when she tried to slug him, he moved very fast and literally faded from view. What the? Not even Batman is that fast. Nice try, Ivy-chan. But you need to move faster than that. I only allowed your plants to catch me to have an idea of your skills. And while you get an A for the seduction bit, you failed in some others as well. She turned and tried to spot her foe and shouted, how can you be alive? My kiss can kill any man. Well, as you have found out, I am no ordinary man. And if you think I am pulling your chain, why don't I kiss you for a change? That surprised the female supervillain, as no one was crazy enough to try kissing her of their own free will. But somehow this guy was immune to her kiss, which was impossible as she was the only one able to make the antidote for all the poisons she unleashed with her lips. She turned and there was the man before her grinning once more, and before she could react, he kissed her and he was not dropping dead at all. His kiss was light and yet it seemed to be strong and masculine, and that had a very interesting effect on her as he pressed his lips a bit more on her own and he still was not dropping dead at all. She even felt him lick her lips as well with his tongue. He then replied in a very teasing tone as if he could sense that he had somehow knocked her senseless. Come on, Ivy-chan, put some more power in the kiss. You're not getting flustered by the fact that I am a man who immune to your kiss of death, are you? She pushed him away and he laughed gently and spoke in a teasing tone. You are getting flustered. You are blushing so hard. Your face is like a rose, like your hair. That adds to the beauty you've already got. You know, care to try again, Ivy-chan? I promise I'll show you how to kiss better if you let me. Ivy did not wait to try and figure things out as she shouted as her plants began to react to her emotions. No, I will not accept this. Stop him, my darlings. The plants moved at their mistress's commands, and Na managed to avoid them. And this time around, he was not going to let Ivy's pets get to him. He quickly took out one of his swords and began to cut down the vines that were trying to get to him. He saw that Ivy was looking at him in utter horror and confusion. The first emotion was nod since he was killing her plant pets, and the second emotion was there due to the fact that he was still alive. Truth be told, the reason, or rather reasons, that he was still alive was his more than ample vitality, bloodline, sanenjutsu training, and the chakra given to him by Kurama. But he was not going to reveal that for any reason, as he was enjoying the situation a little too much. Poison Ivy was still sending the vines at him, and he cut him down until he decided to make a move. As he suddenly faded from the view of Ivy, she backed away only to bump into him as she turned around to backhand him. Naru ducked the attack and was soon before Ivy, and he quickly kissed her again. Once more, Ivy was shocked to see that he was not dropping dead or screaming in pain from the toxins she normally would have unleashed via contact, and it was becoming difficult for her to react. Na then spoke to her husky into her ear as he broke the contact with her lips. You know, I can respect the whole idea of protecting nature and all that, but I am still going to stop you since what you are going to is going to kill people. You think killing them is going to be the answer? Ivy looked at Naruto darkly as she replied. They are harming the environment. Killing nature. You think that you can do better than what I am doing. You'll be surprised what being less violent can bring you, Ivy-chan. I know all there is about you and what you used to do and who you used to be. You're taking this love for nature a little too far, don't you think? Ivy snorted and tried to launch another series of kicks at Naruto, who could see that despite her experience, she had not ever faced anyone who could ht her without being hampered by her poisons. All the while, she spoke to him and she was frowning a great deal as she was no doubt getting annoyed by the fact that she was not yet able to hit him. What do you care? No doubt you think you can exploit nature just like them. They ignore the fact that this world is fragile and they can do what they like. I am the only one who can protect nature. She deserves to be protected and you think killing is going to do that. Especially when you consider the fact that what you will do can kill people who are not part of your plans. You think that your attack will only target the ones you want in this factory. What happens when innocent people are poisoned in the long run or killed by what you intend to do? The factory workers there have no idea about what their company is doing and they are only working there to earn money to pay for their bills, pay their taxes, feed house, and clothe their families. Do they deserve to die just for doing what they can to take care of their families and give a future? For them. Na stopped attacking Ivy at this point as she looked back at him as he spoke seriously. You may target those who you feel commit crimes towards nature. But have you ever considered the fact that you could also be attacking people who either do not know it or were just trying to go about ith their lives and had no idea about it? I know about the accident that gave you your powers, but I can bet that there was a cost to it as well. If there is something I learned in my life, there's always a cost to having power. You don't know what you are talking about. Leave me alone. I know that your accident denied you ever being able to have kids. And I know that the idea of never being able to have children is a fate most, if not all, women think is worse than death. Because losing the ability to have children takes away the ability to bring new life into the world, which is why women are the ones who are able to have children. And it's never the men who can do that. That's why you care deeply for nature. You care for plants because they are the only things you can nurture and grow yourself. They're taking the place of those who you could have called your family, aren't they? You protect nature because you want to be able to feel like a mother when you can never be one yourself. Ivy glared at him and then lashed out with the plants once more. Na, however, evaded them and he replied. I struck a nerve, didn't I, Ivy-chan? Shut up. You don't know anything about me. Na moved and grabbed her fist and replied, I might not know you, but I do know how important nature is. If you want me to prove my point, then let me show you. Ivy did not understand why, but he was serious, and she replied, if you're lying to me, I'll make you regret it, even if you are indeed immune to my poisons. Na nodded and then spotted a dying plant in a pot, no doubt left behind, and was already nothing more than a shriveled little thing in poor soil. It was the perfect test subject for his little demonstration, and he took it before him as he sat down cross-legged. Ivy watched as Naruto focused into himself and accessed the growing reserve of purified chakra he got from Kurama. The energy was still very potent, and Kurama was willing to part with portions of it once in a while, and his hands were coated in deep blue chakra energy. What the Ivy was surprised as she suddenly saw the glowing energy coming from the Hoage's hands, and it seemed to make the air feel alive for so me reason. She felt her body somehow react to the energy in a rather pleasant way, and she looked to see that her plants seemed to be calmed by the energy. But what really got her attention was the plant that Naro had found. As Narrat placed his hands with the energy on either side of the plant, the once dead and decaying thing actually began to grow again. The eoterist watched in shock as the plant began to gain new life. The bark became healthy again. The branches grew longer and stronger, leaves sprouted out, and beautiful violets came from the plant. In a few moments, what was once a dead and gone plant that made her furious at humans who cared little for life was brought back to life by this man. Narad grinned a bit as he took the plant and channeled some more yang chakra into the soil to make it more healthy. He then got up and moved to a stunned Ivy and gave her the blooming plant as he spoke next to her. Here you go, Ivy-chan. I think this plant will do well under your care. Ivy touched the plant trying to see if the whole thing was some illusion and she was being tricked, but there was no trick at all. She could sense that the plant before her was truly healthy and blooming. The soil that was in the pot also felt different. The soil seemed to be alive and tingled with energy and could be strong enough to sustain the plant for months despite the fact that it should be already barren. She studied the plant again and seeing that the plant was indeed real, she looked at Naruto and spoke. How did you do this? Nar grinned and replied. Now that would be telling Ivy-chan. After all, even a man has got to have some secrets, right? What I can say is that the energy I have is unique to me and when I use it, I can affect life and nature itself in a positive way. Care to feel it as well, Ivy-chan? Nar gently placed his hand on Ivy's cheek and to the redhead's surprise. The energy that she felt from the Hoage's hand seemed to make her feel a level of warmth and sensation that felt very pleasant, almost to the point that she actually moaned. She realized that in a moment and looked at Narrat, who grinned a bit more and even gave her a very knowing smirk. You like that, don't you, Ivy-chan? Ivy looked at him and spoke seriously. How are you able to do all of that? Are you a metahuman? No, though I have no clue what metahuman means just yet. But as you can guess, I'm not your average human. You know, if you want to make a contribution to nature, you make sure to get people on your side for once instead of scaring the living daylights out of them or killing them. I mean, seriously, Ivy-chan, you have a lot of power already, but you can't expect people to change their ways right off the bat. The more you fight like a terrorist, the more likely you make enemies. Try having some allies on your side for a bit. See how it goes. Since the more allies and less enemies you have, the better off you might be in the long run. You expect me to side with the people who are taking nature for granted. Not all people take nature for granted, you know. Some of them know that if nature gets ruined, then where will they go from here? There are people who care about nature as much as you do, and despite that they are not always listened to, they do get things done. Just try to defeat your foes without killing them. I kill my foes too, of course. But only when I have to protect my precious people or to keep innocent people from being hurt. Besides, if you have the law on your side and not on their side, wouldn't it be a lot easier for you to do what you want and defend nature, since at least you don't have to worry about Batman and the cops as well as the government? Ivy thought it over and had to admit that the Hokage did have a point there. It was at times easier if the law was on one side and not digging its talons into the sides of said person. And while she was a radical, there were others like her, like those men and women willing to give the Japanese fishermen a serious headache when they go for harpooning whales. She did not really have a deep liking for whales, but she understood the reasons behind their actions, and she could respect their willingness to risk being labeled as pirates. And while they had to follow the laws when they carried a flag of another nation on their missions, those same laws prevented them from being prosecuted on sight by their foes, since they did not want to cause an international incident. However, that still left the blonde before her as she spoke towards him. And what about you? What exactly are you going to do with me? Nar replied with a smirk. Obviously, I am only going to stop you from killing people even if they are guilty of what you feel are crimes against nature. If you try to fight them without killing them, unless you have to, that might not bother me too much. But when you harm innocent people in your vendetta intentionally, that when the kid gloves are off, Ivy-chan. And truth be told, compared to the others I have dealt with, you are going to be in serious trouble with them than just me. I pretty much leave you to your own devices unless you cross the line. I might like nature, but I am not going to kill people intentionally for it, since you forget that people are part of nature's plans too, even if humans are the dangerous ones. There are humans who can save nature too, just like you, though not to that level. I'm not exactly human anymore. You do know that, right? Yeah, but you have the heart of a human. You can be a force of nature for sure. Heck, by all rights, you could be ranked as a nature goddess with those powers of yours, but you have a human mind, body, heart, and senses. And humans know when to punish and when to nurture. You might have gotten these powers at an accident, but you can use them to protect and heal just as much as you can harm and kill. If you can become more than you are and have allies on your side, I have a feeling your mission will be less difficult. Plus, you can recover what it means to care for all life, not just plants. Na then grinned a bit more perversely as he replied. Besides that, I can help you in another fashion. Ivy raised her eyebrow as he moved forward and whispered into her ear. I can let you experience what it means to be a beautiful woman who is attractive to a man, Ivy-chan. And that means in a very physical fashion if you feel so inclined. That got Ivy to blush bright red to the point her face was like a rose and she looked at him in shock as he smiled even more. Did I get you hot and bothered by any chance, Ivy-chan? Please say yes. You can't possibly be serious. Naruto grinned and replied as he moved to Ivy once more, and she did not react negatively as he traced her lips with his finger. Oh, but I am Ivy-chan. After all, I am quite possibly the only man at this point who is immune to your toxins and poisons, as well as your pheromones. But I doubt you need the last power to get my attention on you. And there's the fact that I am not an enemy of yours unless you make me into one. I also have the power to nurture nature as well as caring for it as you do, though in a more moderate fashion. Plus, my skills can help you gather all the evidence you need to nail enemies to the wall. And there's the fact that I have a lot of experience when it comes to making women very happy as well. You might not be able to have a chance to be a mother in the human way, but that hardly means you can't be a woman in the human way either. Na stopped to let that all sink into Ivy's head, and he replied as he could see that she had taken it all in. Now then, if you plan to go ahead with your previous intent, I am going to fight seriously and you can bet Ivy-chan that this might not end well for you since you can't defeat me with poison, NS and toxins. And as you have seen, I am not in the same league as Batman. Or you can call this off and take what I suggested into consideration. And if you need convincing, then I am more than willing to do just that. Later, as Na got out of the sewers, he swore that he was going to clean up and shower after all that. He had smelled pretty horrid things before, but a Gotham sewer was one experience he had no intention of repeating. But at least he managed to stop Ivy from her plans and hopefully made her change her ways. He doubted that one night was going to cut it, but there was no sense in trying it outright. Besides, he was not joking about letting Ivy have some male company for once in her life. After all, he was not an enemy of hers unless she did something that could harm innocent people. He respected nature in a fashion that was similar to her, and he was naturally immune to her poisons and toxins, so dying from her touch or kiss would not happen anytime soon. Besides, he would have to admit that the idea of being intimate with someone that good-looking and dangerous had a very nice charm to it. That was something that Kurama commented on. You certainly stepped into it now, brat. I can't believe you actually want that to happen between the two of you. I gave my word after all, Kurama, and you know me. I back my words with action. HMPH. I know that, Kit. That's the reason you and I have managed to work together well for the past many years and the reason I learned to respect. And even like you, still, you have grown some serious balls as you humans call it. You do know that if it was not for the facts that your Uzumaki bloodline gives you the vitality and stamina, your senjutsu training, which you have been working on like mad, and my ability to heal you of injury and sickness, her kiss could have killed you, right? I know and I like it and I can certainly enjoying showing her how to use those charms of her better. Kurama laughed at that and replied, and you have the gall to call me a pervert. You're turning into a pervert who flirts with women who try to kill you. I personally find that to be a weird balance between brave and suicidal. Na laughed at that and moved on while switching back to his senjutsu mode to scan the area around him, and he could not help but smirk in surprise. When he felt a very familiar chakra signature. And then 3 familiar ones. Well, now we have company. Batman, Robin, Batgirl, and Superman. They no doubt are trying to track us down. Kurama figures they would be interested. You left the impression after all on them. So any plans yet? Let them make a first move and we string 'em along. See how far they're willing to go to try and get us. Don't you mean you? Keep in mind you have not exactly told them about me and the fact that it makes you a Jinchuriki. Remember, and I will not unless something convinces me to tell me otherwise. Besides, telling them I got a demon fox inside me ain't exactly common knowledge around here yet. Plus, they'll either think I am joking or I deserve to be in the loony bin. And no way am I going to let myself get locked up with the nuts that call that place home. Bruce looked through some special binoculars and spoke to both Tim and Barbara. Looks like our Hokage friend has gone away from the sewers. Tim raised an eyebrow at that and replied, what could he have been doing in there? Barbara shook her head and replied, don't know, but that's where the thieves were supposed to have been seen going to last time I checked the reports. The fact they were acting like that must mean they were being controlled. Don't bother with that. I looked through the sewers. The crooks are there and they look poisoned. Batman decided to check the bodies out later. If what he had seen on the stolen list was accurate, then that meant Poison Ivy was on the move again. As much as he liked nature due to his time traveling and training, he did not like the extremes that Ivy did to protect it. He personally disliked it when she nearly killed his friend Harvey Dent before he turned into Two-Face, nor when she nearly turned Alfred into a plant-human hybrid. He then had an idea as he took out one of his traces and gave it to Superman and spoke. How good were you in baseball? Superman looked a bit confused for a moment and then nodded in agreement as he was quickly able to grasp just what was it that Bruce had in mind. He pitched his arm up and managed to weigh in how much strength he needed for the distance and how to avoid injuring the Man, as well as allowing the tracer to latch onto him without becoming a bullet. Not too hard for him to do when one considered the fact that Clark had a very advanced brain and the power to use said brain as well. He tossed it and soon the TRCER sailed through the air propelled by the Kryptonian strength and he saw it with his microvision as it managed to land on the coat of the Hokage. Just as the man took off and he replied to Bruce, got him. That was the cue for the rest of them to go after the Hokage as the man was now on the move. Perhaps they could finally get the answers they were in need of. Later, the four of them managed to track down the Hokage to a hotel. And as soon as they were there, Bruce nodded that not was the time to go in and find the man. But once they got there, he was out, no doubt going to grab a meal of some sort, as it was the right time for dinner. This allowed him to look the place over. Bruce entered the hotel room that was owned by the Hokage and wondered just what the status was of this masked hero when it came to financing. The apartment might not be high class, but to be able to be here in a well-known hotel in good comfort suggested the guy was well-ended and therefore was not to be taken lightly. He was also curious about the way his weapons were made, as the recovered ninja stars were authentic and were not like the kind of things one found in a novelty store. He was not alone in this search as Robin, Batgirl, and Superman were there with Clark scanning the place. They all had taken a very strong interest on the man. Clark to find out more of this man who had managed to find out his identity. Barbara was curious on what was the guy's story. And Robin wanted to see if this guy was as good as Bruce without him using those powers of his. Bruce looked at the room and suspected that the guy was hiding more than just his identity as he looked over the drawers as he did not help but feel that something was going on. It was a feeling in his mind and gut. And if there was one thing his training had taught him, it was to trust at times the feelings in his gut. That was when they discovered the tracer on the coat of the Hokage with a note in it. They took the note and read it. Hello there. I figured you would find this hotel room of mine sooner or later, Batman. And no doubt that your companions are with you, and I wager to guess old Big Blue Superman is with you, too. You might be wondering how I know Superman is with you, right? Let's just say that someone with his more than unique energy signature is pretty darn hard to miss, especially for a guy like me. Couple that with his ability to see through things except lead. You would have found me already. Only I knew you were coming. So I decided to scram in a very different fashion and leave something and your team might be able to hear people coming a mile away. But I have learned some techniques that trump the training. And no, I am not going to tell, so don't bother asking. Anyhow, it was not unexpected you would find me. So I decided to make myself scarce. If there's one thing I learned in my more than interesting life that kept me from being buried in a coffin is to always have a backup plan. And I recommend you forget trying to find the tailor of my coat just in case you think to find him and question who he made it for. Because like that letter I gave Superman, that coat's about to go bye-bye. C.R. Hokage. That was the only warning that Batman and the others had as the jacket suddenly began to burn and soon was reduced into nothing but a pile of ash along with the tracer. That was enough to tell Bruce and company that their chance to find him was long dead and gone. And with the room's fire alarm going off from the smoke coming from the ruined jacket, there was going to be too many people in the area for them to get a precise idea where the Hokage had gone. Clark had to shake his head and spoke to the others. How the heck did he find out that I was around? Bruce shook his head at that and replied, I am not very sure on how he did it, but it seems that we are going to have to leave before we're found out. Tim, can you come back here and find out just who rented the room already on it first thing tomorrow? Our morning. I want to find out just who this guy really is. Clark had a feeling that it was not going to be that simple as he looked at the now reduced pile of destroyed cloth as they soon got out of the room before hotel security came into the room. Outside, Narrat grinned a bit as he was a very fair distance away from the hotel that he had left his coat in. It was sad that he had to lose that coat, but that was why he always carried spares in his scrolls. He then moved away from the place and was happy that he secretly planned an escape route out of the hotel in advance. After all, that was not his real base of operations, and he was going to his real base right now. The blonde shinobi moved quickly over the buildings and resorted to using his kanai with the wires and soon arrived near an old steel mill that was left behind by the company that once owned it, and it was outside of the city limits. This was his real base of operations, and he had made it as comfortable as he could in the metal there, while old was useful for making spare weapons. He had been friends with Tenton and she did teach him on how to make his own weapons and gear. So why the company left behind good quality metal was something he was confused with. And since this place was deemed off limits and no longer of any value, it was going to destroy it in a month from now, more than ample time for him to make the place his base while in Gotham. And when they demolished it, the city government was going to unwittingly erase any trace of him ever being there in the first place. Their lose and his gain, he supposed, and as he went in he decided to make sure that before the last week was over he was going to make things very interesting before he left the city. The rest of next week for Nar was downright entertaining as he had managed to avoid getting on the radar of Batman and company while tangling against Selina Kyle. The woman was certainly a lot better prepared than last time they met and she was more than willing to go all out to try her. Evade him when she finally robbed someone. The reason he was able to locate her was namely due to his senjutsu training and how to sense chakra. After sensing Selina's chakra energy signature and narrowing it down, he now was able to track her. But she was not going to make it the least bit easy. She apparently had been busy getting herself into tip-top shape, and they were soon moving over the rooftops, and there was no doubt in his mind that they had to be careful since Batman might be around. The first day of the between them had her stealing a golden scepter with jewels from a businessman's private collection, and he was able to arrive before anyone arrived on site, and soon the chase was on. The distance to the place where he would not chase her was fairly long, so she was going to push it as much as she could. Nar and Selina had a heck of a race between them, and as they faced one another, the female thief was really giving Nar a very interesting time as she did what she could to fight him off or evade him. But it was not long before he managed to switch her sash bag with another one of the same make, which turned out to be filled with a cat plush toy. This time, Selina found out about the switch when she checked the bag as he appeared right in front of her while hanging upside down on the roof of the building that she had tried to hide in. The woman knew that as per the agreement between them, she was going to reveal her face. Once she did so, Narrat whistled wolfishly and called her one very attractive woman, and he was impressed at how she managed to keep herself this good looking. He then returned the golden specter to the owner. Though, in this case, the man turned out to have been something of the fencer for some wild cats that was supposed to be off limits. That was more than enough to explain just why Selina targeted the man. Naruto had some entertainment at the end of it when he spotted none other than Bane, who was currently going in to fight Batman and his group. Though the three had to deal with Bane's goons as the man was currently running a drug-running business. The man was certainly large, and despite the size, this guy certainly knew how to move and fight. And while Batman seemed to be a bit troubled, he was more than willing to go all out to fight the muscle-bound criminal. He did not interfere yet, as he wanted to see just how Batman would do in this kind of the fight. And he was not the least disappointed, as Batman finally proved to be as capable as before, despite the fact that at times Bane tossed him around like a rag doll. Robin and Batgirl were there as well, and he could not help but nod in respect at the way the two fought alongside Batman. Though his eyes were locked in on Batgirl as he wolf whistled mentally at the way she moved. He was very interested in using her as a new character in his novel series once he was out of the area before he was going to be found out. But not before seeing the team defeat Bane and allow the man to take him away by the police, and no doubt going back to that lovely place, Arkham Asylum. On the next day, Naruto decided to get to work writing on his newest novel, and he was more than willing to use what he had been doing, or rather done so far, with both Ivy and Selina. His very much accepted perverted nature already going into overdrive as he wrote the stories that involved Selina and Pamela as well as himself. Though he usually changed the names and also made sure to make some alterations to make things a lot more interesting and avoid arousing the ire of said ladies, he was very interested to see just how the people were going to react the very second these stories came out into circulation. And once he was done, he was off to finally continue the next phase of his competition with the gorgeous Selina Kyle as night fell. However, along the way, he ran into one really oddball but still attractive woman who rode one really weird contraption if he ever saw one, and that was saying something, since he had seen his fair share of crazy contraptions back home. The blonde spotted the woman known as Roxy Rocket, a daredevil stunt woman who had way too many close calls and was an adrenaline junkie to the extreme. The woman had managed to do a daring robbery and was cruising along the streets, scaring the living daylights out of people as he managed to keep out of sight and get dressed. The Gotham PD tried to chase her and stop her rampage. But it was also here that Nar appeared. Roxy was a bit surprised at the appearance he made, namely since he was currently in his wind armor jutsu, but tried to play chicken with him and even gave him a kiss and a dare to catch her. The blonde was not in the mood to play catch the woman. So, he decided to put an end to this chase. He quickly fired a pair of shuriken into the engine, and that slowed Roxy down, allowing him to get ahead of her and then intercept her with a quick mid-air grab, as he then moved to fire one of his rearmed kunai and then swing over to the nearby sign. He placed her down and then spoke to her about trying to get herself turned into a proverbial smear on the wall, which was the fate of her little ride as it was now burning on the wall. The woman, however, didn't seem to mind and even tried to come onto him. Apparently, she got a rush facing him in aerial fighting and was even asking him if he had a girlfriend. Nar didn't know whether to laugh or snort. Sure, Roxy was interesting and certainly a sight, but she was a bit odd in his mind, and that was saying something since Nar had a very long history of meeting people who were beyond borderline crazy. He decided to partially lie and say that he was seeing someone. To which Roxy asked if his girlfriend was as wild and interesting as she was, to which he replied she was. That did not make Roxy change her tune. However, as she replied that she was going to prove that she was a lot wilder. Nar snorted a bit, and despite Roxy being charming, which was not too hard to do with the way she dressed, he finally managed to restrain her and leave just as the cops came in. The woman reminded a bit too much of Anko, who actually flirted with him a number of times, even though he was technically married. Though unlike Roxy, Anko knew when not to push her luck and merely enjoyed the company. He also evaded the police and soon was out of sight. As night fell, Nar managed to move out and evade the police patrols and soon used his senjutsu training. He soon found Selina and soon found her, stealing a golden cat mask from the Gotham Museum, and off she went, forcing him to follow. This time, however, he was not alone in the pursuit, though it was the GPD, and soon he and the police were closing in on Selina. The cops had a hard time in keeping up with Selina as he watched from the sidelines. But the blonde thief then managed to enter a series of abandoned apartments, and soon the police were forced to search the place building by building. That was more than good for Naruto as he was in senjutsu mode and tracking Selina. The two of them met, and this time instead of fighting him, Selina tried to take the seduction route, and boy was she unleashing the charm this time around. The two chased one another, and despite the decrepit conditions of the apartments, they were doing all right. At one point, the blonde thief actually decided to kiss him a bit while rubbing her body on his body, more than enough to get him interested. She even ran his hands on his thighs, a first on his part. She even tried to place his hands on her of all things, and he was not going to complain as Selena was really hamming it up. Not to mention that she was even willing to use her tongue on him on a few instances, as she also tried to get away from him when she could while evading the police. That was more than enough to tell Na was really willing to do what she could in order to get away from him. He was not far behind in the seduction game, as he was more than willing to give as good as he got. When she thought she had evaded him, he would appear and whisper into her ear from behind while gently smacking her well-shaped butt at the same time. That action he did made her cry out a bit at his willingness to do that and briefly glare at him before trying to reverse the whole thing. She would even try to use her whip at him, but he merely gave her smiles and playful cat calls. He even managed to catch her whip and then pull her to him, and he would catch her and shamelessly rub his face on her bust. That was more than enough to make Selena gasp at his actions, as this was something she had not expected. He even placed his thigh between her legs, making her raise an eyebrow at him for his actions. This went on for a while until Selena escaped after managing to tie him up and left unaware of the fact that Na had managed to get into her sash halfway through their little romp through the apartments and place in a simple but very cute cat-themed mask which he had managed to buy from before. As she left, he freed himself and finally surprised Selena in the pier by revealing the switch, and she groaned a bit as she knew what that meant. The next day, they were on the date, and it was rather interesting as Na decided to dress nice for the occasion. After all, this was a date and he had to look his best for his date. He did that with his wives when he went with them on either single dates or in group dates. The only difference he made was to make his hair move down and not be spiky. He dressed in a simple but very classy dress suit, and Selena appeared wearing a white dress with simple but elegant high-heeled shush. OEs, and had a purse as well. He managed to get them into one of the more popular restaurants in Gotham, and soon it was a date which was rather nice. Selena actually stated that despite his change in hairstyle, he was not bad looking. And while she asked him if he was sure that he could tolerate being seen with her since he was technically a teenager and she was older than him, he laughed a bit. He then replied that considering the modern world's view of things, there was nothing too wrong about this sort of thing. And despite his young look, he was a lot older than she realized. That comment naturally made Selena raise her eyebrow at the comment, but decided to let the whole thing. The two of them began to enjoy the day, and despite the fact that there were some comments directed at him by the men in Satan D hearing range, and the same to Selena, it was not all bad. The woman managed to tell him about the events that led to her fascination with cats and her love for all kinds, either domesticated or wild. Na decided to also trade a bit of his own history, namely how he actually enjoyed gardening and also working with some animals. He even mentioned that incident with the cat that belonged to the feudal lord's wife and how the thing had given him and his friends a hell of a chase. Selena could not help but picture the sight of that and be slightly amused. But that amusement only grew when Na explained just how wily the cat was and how it had tried countless times to turn his face into confetti and also make him go way off the mark. The blonde shinobi also spoke about the tiger he and Hikaru eventually called friend and traveled with, as well as his encounters with other creatures. Na then mentioned that despite things he actually had an affinity to toads and foxes, making Selena amused considering the fact he had used a frog pee up it to fool her the first time they had met one another. Naruto did not reveal anything else about himself, but merely used a cover name, going by the name of Nathan Stein, who had stayed in Japan for a number of years and recently returned to America to get used to seeing the world after being in Japan for so long. To prove it, he even used his real language, which was certainly Japanese, to the ear of most people, something that Selena nodded to. This went on for a while as Selena explained that while she knew that being caught was always a danger as a thief, she lived for the thrill it gave her, and she relished the chance to show her abilities as well as gain gold things to enhance her lifestyle. But she also pointed out that she took care to avoid engaging the police and law enforcement as well as avoiding harming people unless she had no other choice. And even if she did get forced into a situation where violence was her only chance, she would not make a mistake and kill someone, even if it was accidental. That was because she disliked killing unless there was no other alternative. And the fact was that if she killed someone, I would only make things worse for her. And she used the money to obviously fund charitable causes and to help the animals she grew fond of. As dinner came, both of them enjoyed the meal. And before they parted at the end of the night, Naruto told her that he was looking forward to the last day. And she nodded as she did find him charming, but not that charming. To which Naruto took no offense, and soon they were off to their respective hideouts. As night fell, the chase was on between them. Though this time around, Selena took to robbing what was a priceless painting from a collection piece. Naruto had to admit that the choice of target was new until he learned that not only was the painting valuable, but it had the images of Bast and Sekhmet. On them, two Egyptian goddesses with cat heads on human bodies. That was enough to make Kurama comment that this Selena woman took her love of felines a little too far, to which Naruto had to agree as they were now moving after Selena. And this time, the blonde female thief was going all out on trying to lose him. They were moving from the vault where she stole the painting and into the social district of Gotham. No doubt she was trying to use the place to lure him off her trail. If she could not evade him, fight him, or seduce him, then she was going to distract him in a very different fashion. The sights and sounds were certainly a step up from what he was used to, and he had to be careful since he had to avoid being seen as well. He had to give Selena credit for the deception. And this time around, he was going to have to be careful since it turned out that the woman had decided to cover herself with some form of scent masking on her outfit. She really went all out, and he could guess that the idea of dressing up for him for picture taking was not something she had in mind. But he was not going to give up anytime soon as he pursued Selena, relying on his senjutsu to track her down. But it was here that a number of thugs decided to attack one of the nearby theaters, and that was enough to force Naruto to stop and go in to find out what was going on. Apparently, a number of the wealthy Gotham class were watching a brand new show, and the thugs intended to rob them. This was enough to make him stop and get into the act as the people were being forced to give up their money, jewels, credit cards, and the like. Though why would the people carry those? He would never know. The thugs were also interested in holding the performer prisoner, a drop-deodad, gorgeous raven-haired woman in some seriously attractive female stockings and a rather interesting-looking suit. He saw that the name of the performer was Zatanna, and when he directed his senjutsu senses, he was surprised to find that she had a bonfire of chakra in her as well as a level of energy that he did not recognize well enough. This woman had some serious powers and apparently was not using them yet, and some of the thugs were interested in her. But instead of cowering, the woman fought back like a cornered tigress. This was enough to make Naruto step in as he quickly tossed one of his special kana to appear into the front of the thugs and Zatanna as he launched himself at them with serious attacks on them all. That surprised the people in the audience as they had thought Batman and his team were there. Na could see that none of the thugs were that skilled and he wiped the floor with them quickly enough. But one of them managed to get up and grab the magician from behind. He placed a knife on her throat and that made Na all the more annoyed as he knew that this was not good and the police would not arrive in time. Plus, Selena was getting away. But he was surprised this time around as Zatanna used her wand and aimed upward to create a powerful blast of powder in tea. He faced that was precise. The man began to scream in pain and clutch his nose and eyes as Zatanna then gave the guy a solid kick to the balls, making Na raise an eyebrow, enough to distract him as another thug got up despite the beating to clobber him with a chair. Zatanna turned, waved her wand a bit, making Na realize that the energy he sensed was active and he turned to see the man being tied up by ropes. Where those ropes came from, he had no idea, but he was impressed. He turned to Zatanna and asked her if she was fine and the magic user replied, "I am all right. You're the Hokage, aren't you? Saw me on TV, Miss Zatanna. Yep. Got to say that the change in wardrobe is nice. Anyway, thanks for your help here. Didn't think anyone was this crazy to attack. Money can make you do strange things. Anyway, got to go. Hope to meet you again, Miss Zatanna. And nice kick, by the way." The raven-haired magician smirked and replied, "Just because I look like this doesn't mean I am helpless. Had previous experience creeps like them. And I hope to meet you again, too. You've got some serious powers." And afterwards, Naruto went on with the chase. And despite the distance between him and Selena, he managed to catch her with the Hiroshian Nojutsu, his Kani wire, and chakra chain mo. Vehemence, plus his speed. The two carried on with their race until they were inside of the pier that was the safe haven. But Naruto was quickly able to react Selena and suddenly reached the special container she used to hide the painting in. The two managed to duke it out in a fight, but Na still managed to hold on even with Selena using not just her claws, but her whip as well. Na quickly took a few smoke bombs and in a complete reversal of last time, he blinded her and moved in quickly through the smoke and made his move. Just as Selena got away from the smoke and soon they were facing each other. They fought once more and soon it came to a point that they both fell off the building and Na used his chakra chain to latch on the building and catch Catwoman as they looked at one another. The thief smiled at the rescue as he moved to the other building and soon they were only a few steps away from the pier. Selena opened the container and rolled it open to find that she got only a blank sheet and she looked at Naruto to reveal that he had the painting, meaning that he won. Selena sighed at this and knew that the jig was up and looked at Naruto who smiled warmly underneath his mask. 2 days later at night, Na was very happy with himself as he was now taking a train away from Gotham and heading out of the city. He decided to head back to Los Angeles and stay there for a while until he was done with what he needed to do for his books. In his bag were a number of pictures that had Selena Kyle as the model. The blonde woman was not too keen on it at first, but after some time, she agreed to it, and she wore a number of clothes and dresses that she had on hand that he found very nice. The party dress look, the simple business-like look, and a few others, all non-threatening, but very attractive in Naruto's eye. But the highlights of the pictures included Selena wearing what was a two-piece swimsuit, which was deep black with gold hoops, and also a simple one-piece suit that had oval shapes to reveal her stomach and back and managed to hold her bust. All of which were done alongside Isis in her apartment. And truth be told, Selena was quite surprised that her pet cat, a very discerning judge of character, actually liked Na. The blonde was also pleased that unlike the last cat he had to deal with, Isis did not try to turn his face to confetti. ND that seemed to confirm to Selena that she could trust Naruto well enough. The whole thing took at least a few hours all the way to lunch, for which he personally bought with his own money and even bought Isis a few treats of fish, making Selena smirk a bit at his attitude and the fact that he was a very nice guy, even though it was fairly obvious that he was no saint since she did catch him looking at her in a less than pure fashion. Still, once it was over, he made sure to keep his word. And for the last 3 days, he left her to her own devices if she ever decided to take back being Catwoman. Which was a good thing in his mind, and he made sure to not bother her again. It was not just Selena, though. Apparently, Ivy had taken a shot at his offer, and he had indeed helped her on a few things to get the factory closed down, and the owners swimming in so many legal problems and being protes. Ted that they decided to close down the factory. That also meant that Ivy could now take over and clean up the mess coverly. She was not too sold on the idea just yet, and he expected that to be the case. But that hardly meant that he and by extension, Pamela did not get to try things out. And sure enough, he enjoyed teasing and flirting with Pamela, who reacted naturally enough, despite the fact that she was still unsure how to react to being with a man who was someone who could not be poisoned by H. He took things slowly and began to really heat things up between them a bit, so she was used to it. And despite her instance that this was not going to change her ways like that, her moaning and groaning was telling him that he was on the right path to something with her. It was not too long though, and despite her denials at times, he could tell that Pamela had enjoyed herself. That was why he made sure to tell her that he had decided to be on call for her if she ever needed someone to talk to, as well as keep her company. It made the whole thing a lot more interesting since one had to know the fact that he was the only man thus far who was not harmed by her in any stretch of the imagination. She replied that she would keep that in mind, but she warned him not to get any ideas. He also ran into Zatanna as she was getting her stuff loaded into her truck for another trip around the country. Though in this case, that was last night when he was able to find her. Someone with as much chakra as she did mixed with that other energy was not too hard to miss. And after some time chatting in his disguise, she decided to let him take some pictures of her, which she then signed with her in her costume, which to him was more than enough. The only problem he had before he packed up was meeting that massive figure of a zombie Solomon Grundy. The creature came barreling into a nearby train station that apparently had a shipment of gold being taken in. And on the same night, as well as his meeting with Zatanna, so off he went to deal with the new foe that ruined this night of his. However, once he saw the being thrash through the guards and attack them and sensed that he was dead already, it brought back memories of his encounters with ghosts and undead, namely of Hedon and Kakazu, the immortal pair of Akatsuki. He disliked them immensely since they had killed Asuma and left Kurane widow and their son fatherless. And while it was something to expect given their lives as Konohan ninja, it hardly meant that they liked it. He personally fought Kakazu while Shikamaru personally defeated Hiden and sealed that bastard away. Solomon Grundy was not in the same league as those two, namely in the brains and justu department. But he was tough. He managed to stop him from harming any more guards, but had to resort to senjutsu to deal with this guy since the magical energy that kept him alive seemed to be affected by it. Na was not too sure what was it that brought this dude back to life, but he could tell that it was not the same as Kabat. And Orochimaru's impure world resurrection jutsu, so he was going to have to go all out. He and Grundy tore through the train station, and while the zombie got some hard hits in, the durability he got from his senjutsu form helped him even the odds as he landed blow after blow as well on the form. Our living man. Grundy was less than pleased and tried to squash him more than once and used anything he could to swat him, which was why Na used his frog kumite style to knock him around even more until he reverted to something a lot more effective. He summoned the chakra he needed and despite it not being his chakra affinity, this worked well enough on the undead as far as he had seen. Kaden go Kaku no Jutsu. The massive fireball slammed into Grundy and sent him screaming in absolute pain as Naruto quickly followed that up with a Rinnegan attack that sent the massive zombie flying into a collection of fuel drums. And that was soon followed by a massive fireball of an explosion as the fuel went boom. As soon as that was over, off he went to go back to La, but not before sending his newest novel to his employer. And this had the theme of the hero dealing with a woman with one serious green thumb and a lady with a deep connection to cats. Though he made sure to make some changes just to be on the safe side. As for Batman and company, they were still surprised at the news of Naruto's activities and wondered asked how he had been able to avoid them for so long. But what really got the interest of the group were the reports of him fighting Grundy and unleashing a fireball from his mouth. According to witnesses who were not caught in the crossfire of the battle, Bruce knew that it took a lot of force to be Grundy and fire alone. While harmful was not enough to kill the reanimated being, and that was enough to tell him that Grundy was not going to forget the Hokage or what he had done to him. Robin was not too happy. As it turned out, the room was not even being rented by anyone, and that meant he was led by the nose, and that graded on the young crime fighter more than he cared to admit. There was also the report that some of the homeless people had said that Ivy was seen in the Hoage's company, and she seemed to be rather calm and seemed to be at ease with the man. That was something he had not expected, and only served to confuse him even more, as he knew how she could easily kill with a kiss. So, how the Hokage was alive around her added to the whole mess. As for Clark, the guy's ability to sense him before he could even see him confused the Kryptonians since as far as he knew, he did not emit any energy waves that could be seen easily. This added more to the whole deal, and he knew that Bruce was not all too keen on things. The Hokage had now disappeared, as the last they had heard of him was that battle with Grundy. And as he gathered the reports for the Daily Planet, there was no doubts in his mind that sooner or later things were going to come to a head. They were not the only ones to take notice. However, on an island far away from the modern world, are you sure that you have been sensing those changes, Marla? Yes, my queen. Every now and then, I sensed a shifting of the world's natural flow of energy, as if it was being taken to a central point. And then as soon as a large amount was taken, it stopped. It was as if someone or something is actually able to tap into the very flow of energy and redirect it. But it did not feel like the energy was being violated. How so? Almost as if the person or persons who did it was not fighting or bringing nature under his or their wills, but allowing it to flow into them and settle. That kind of skill is unlike what I have sensed before. But I have heard stories of people with magic being able to do such feats. I see. Mother, can it really be coming from man's world? I do not know, but as long as it is not being done here, we have little to fear. What happens out there is not our concern, daughter. We have no need to be concerned with the affairs of men. All right, mother. But I cannot help but be curious. You were always the curious one, my little sun and stars. But place that aside for now. Your sister is waiting for you in the training hall. Yes, mother. To be continued, Author's notes. Okay, yet another chapter finished, and now Naruto is heading back to LA for now to get back into the groove of things in his new home turf, as it were. Once I am on that page, I am going to now focus on having Naruto meet up with the others who will make the league. I know that this might seem a bit short, but I have a lot of things to do and I am a bit rushed as I move on to the other non-Halo stories that I have to update as well as handle some real life matters that have to be done now than later. I also have to be focusing on getting a rest break since I have been getting sick for some reason or another. Might have something to do with the darn weather as far as I can guess, but it might also do with the fact that I don't get a lot of decent sleep these days, plus the food. Anyway, on the Origins chapters, you can bet that when Na arrives, things are about to get interesting. And I can assure you that when Na gets an eyeful of both Sher and Diana, he is really going to have some ideas. Once that's over and done with, Naruto will be meeting some other people as well, namely of the female persuasion. He's already met some of the bad girls, namely Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Roxy Rocket, and Zatanna. So now it's time to ramp things up as he will continue his little tour of the 600th world. Just who will he be running into the rest of the world? Also, if the flirting bits were not up to the standard, I apologize for that since it's been hectic back here. Financial concerns, health issues, everyday needs. You all know what I mean by that sort of thing. It also makes it kind of sad that I don't have a lot of experience flirting with a girl yet. So, I have to make do with what I do know. The parts with Ivy and Catwoman were hard, by the way, for me since the scenes took a lot of my time, and I can only hope that they all meet the standard for good flirting scenes. Will the effects of this change Pamela and Selena? Not too sure yet, but no sense not having fun getting there, right? If you have constructive suggestions, then I am all ears. But if you decide to flame me, then I am going to ignore it all since I dislike flames that are sent to just annoy me. And if you are curious if I will make for this story considering what I have in mind, then the answer is yes, I also managed to read up on the latest manga, so I now know just what sort of power Itachi gave Naruto, and I liked it. I do plan to change the canon a bit to let Naruto keep the crow with Shiwi's eyes since I have already cooked up a plan where it comes to play. And the newest abilities Naruto has as well as his new alliance with Kurama is going to be seen in action in the chapters to come. I can bet that as soon as Naruto reveals those powers, a lot of people in the story are all going to sit up and take notice once Na decides to go all out. But the only time those powers will be seen is if the enemies are going to be a real threat to Naruto and the rest of the league. Also, before I get questioned about a topic on if Na will kill anyone, then let me answer that question right now. Yes, he will kill some of the bad guys in the 600th world, but who is entirely up to me and when is also entirely up to me. So, I hope that this will convince the readers not to think that Na is going to be always taking his foes down without lethal methods being considered. So guys, what do you think about this Naruto story? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Naruto what if stories, make sure to subscribe to Universe of Naruto. Thanks for watching.